All right, hello. So my name is Griffin Howard, and today I'll be covering the privatization of prisons within the state of Alabama. The privatization of prisons is not necessarily a new topic, but it is one that's at the forefront of a lot of political conversations within the state today. So the privatization of prisons is a push to have privatized prisons within the state of Alabama. Public prisons, on one hand, are prisons that are owned, operated, managed, and built by the state government, while private prisons are prisons that are owned, operated, managed, and built by private businesses seeking to generate a profit. This at first hand may not seem like a very negative thing, but in fact, it can lead to a lot of consequences that damage the state as a whole. So private prisons and politicians. The private prison cycle begins whenever a politician pushes for a private prison business to build a prison within the state. This can happen for one of two reasons. Number one, they believe the myth that private prison businesses are going to help them not spend as much taxpayer money, which is in fact false. Or number two, because these private prison organizations are going to lobby for these politicians to become elected. In return, these politicians are going to push for legislature that's beneficial for these businesses, but it's not beneficial for their constituents and for the state. What's going to happen next after this, as I previously mentioned, is a law policy is going to get passed, such as the long-term sentencing of nonviolent drug offenders. And that's going to lead to increased incarceration rates, longer sentencing, which again is just going to generate more profit for these private prison businesses. An effect of this is that community values within the state of property values within the state of Alabama are going to decrease. Tax money is going to be allocated to places where it doesn't need to go, and so on and so forth. So private prisons and prisoners. Prisoners are going to be negatively affected because less certified personnel are going to be employed in these private prison systems because they're trying to save money. A lot of plans to try to reincorporate them back into society, like educational plans, are going to be cut because of this, and so on and so forth. This is going to lead, again, to higher incarceration rates, higher reincarceration rates, and longer sentencing. The environmental overview of the privatization of prisons is that, number one, again, taxpayer money is not going to be going towards education, healthcare, or community planning. It's going to be going towards building private prisons that are housing people that might not even necessarily need to be incarcerated, such as those nonviolent drug offenders. And along with this is that the property values of the communities within that are housing these private prisons is going to rapidly decline. We don't need these private prisons. Whenever they're in place, these communities are going to die out because everybody's going to want to leave. So again, not a great idea. This study shown right here kind of backs up all the claims I just made and has three major points. So number one, the rise of incarceration rates. So the amount of people that are incarcerated in private prison systems between the years 2000 and 2016 increased by 40%, whereas in the public prison systems only increased by 10%. Again, showing that they're only there to generate a profit. There's no reason that difference should be that extreme. Number two, less qualified people are employed at private prisons in order to generate more profit. And number three, private prisons aren't cheaper for taxpayers. They're the same amount of money. Along with this, in the state today, Governor Kay Ivey is actually pushing for giving 2 leases to 2 private prison businesses to come build private prisons in Alabama. Again, this is going to have a lot of negative consequences, which we're going to touch on again in a short amount of time. But luckily, an organization called Communities Not Prisons vouched against this. They went and took a stand against this. They voiced their opinions, which caused the banks backing the deal between Alabama, between this private prison business to end. So luckily, private prisons are coming to Alabama in the very near future, but I'm sure it's still going to be at the forefront of a lot of political conversations. And it's going to make its way back to the table very, very soon. That being said, if private prisons were to come in Alabama, a couple of different things would happen. Number one, as previously mentioned, incarceration, reincarceration, and longer sentencing would occur. Number two, tax money allocation would go to private prisons instead of education, instead of public transportation, instead of community planning, instead of healthcare, so on and so forth. Property values would decrease, and there'd be a lot of political murkiness within the state of Alabama. Once that's introduced, it's really, really hard to get out. So in conclusion, that is my take on private prisons, and have a great day.